It is heating up in Phoenix as we have some trade talks intensifying as a ESPN analyst gives us a new wild report that suggests that Bradley Beal could be on the move, but heading somewhere else for the Suns to be able to acquire Jimmy Butler in this mega blockbuster deal and a one that would shake up Mike Budenholzer's team, but ultimately push the Suns in the right direction. And we're going to be breaking down and looking at all of this on this episode of Suns Digest. I am Bruce Velez with my boy Curtis Jones. Curtis, how we doing today, my guy?
Doing good, doing good. Sleepy as always. I feel like I say that in every single video, but hardworking men like ourselves, we get tired out here, but we still got work to do to bring these guys the Phoenix Suns news.
Oh, of course, and we got to cover all the juicy info. So for you guys, let's get into the news. Make sure to hit that like, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date on everything with Suns Digest. But first, Curtis, it is heating up as we see some new reports coming out this morning from ESPN analyst Brian Windhorst, letting us know that things on the trade market could be intensifying for the Suns. So let's dive in and let's look at it. As we see from the NBA Central, Brian Windhorst on his podcast, The Hoop Collective, was talking and said that the Bulls and Suns have talked on the concept of a Bradley Beal trade where Bradley Beal ends up going into Chicago. And if we want to look at it in more detail here, we see we're dancing around this because I've been burned on aggregation, says Windhorst. But the bottom line is that the Bulls and Suns have talked on the concept of a Bradley Beal ending up in Chicago has been discussed. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's close or whatever. And obviously, Beal has a no trade clause. But Bontemps, I just can't believe that Chicago would even do that deal. So maybe it's never going to happen, but it's definitely been discussed. And Curtis, we've obviously heard a lot of discussions revolving around this Bradley Beal stuff here. As we know, obviously, this team has been going off on the rails over the last couple weeks. So I want to know your thoughts, Curtis. What do you ultimately think on all this chitter chatter?
I like that we're seeing the Suns go out and actually have the conversations, right? Because we hear that we want to get off of this. They want to move this. They might want to do this. Jimmy wants to come over, but we're not hearing what the Suns are exactly saying. So to know that they've had this conversation and that they want to make a move is exactly what I want to hear at this point.
I kind of feel the same way. I think all of us Suns fans here just want to see some sort of shakeup. And at this point, it has to be with Bradley Beal. As we all know, Bradley Beal makes around $50 million, making a crap load of money for this Phoenix Suns team. He's coming off the bench. Even though he's been successful in that role, Bradley Beal could still be a standout player, helping out some other possible teams. So, with all of this news, we're going to be looking at a possible mock trade as well, possibly looking at is this the right move? And this mock trade is courtesy of my guy John Voita of Bright Side of the Sun. But he made this mock trade just a couple days ago, where Bradley Beal goes to the Chicago Bulls. Bobby Portis from the Milwaukee Bucks goes to the Pistons as they are a team needing taking on the salary. The Heat get Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton from the Bucks, where the Bucks acquire Zach LaVine and the Suns acquire Jimmy Butler. Now, in this trade, obviously the Suns get what they want. They obviously get to move off of Bradley Beal, and the Bucks get a contract that they want in Zach LaVine. Now, Curtis, when you're looking at a trade like this, what are your first thoughts that are really jumping out to you?
My first thoughts, my initial thoughts, I would say that this is good because it is what it has been painted as. This is what everyone wants. You get the Bill contract off and you get Jimmy Butler. And I think every Suns fan would be so excited to have him. We've been watching the talks on every network possible. We've talked about it until our faces were blue, right? We know that that's something that people want. And it is a good look. I think that it does do some good for the Suns and does make us a better team. Now, my secondary thought when I take a look at that is to be honest, if we could get that deal done and kind of nix the heat out of there, and then we just get Zach Levine, I might be okay with that. To be honest.
I've seen the reports of Zach LaVine, and I think that that's kind of a failsafe for the Phoenix Suns. In previous videos, we have looked at the possibility of the Suns going after Zach LaVine and ultimately adding another, shot creator, scorer, another player who could play the wing a little bit better than Bradley Beal would definitely be more sort of. The only problem I really have with that, Curtis, is just with the Suns obviously having Booker and Durant obviously needing the ball in their hands. Having a guy like Zach LaVine also requiring to have the ball in his hands is a little bit troublesome. And even though Jimmy Butler obviously would require those touches, would require those minutes, would require that as well. I feel like a player like Jimmy Butler plays a little bit better off the ball, similarly than a player like Zach LaVine does, complementing these guys.
I agree. I agree. That would be a conversation to be had before trying to make a deal like that. Would he be okay being the sixth man? That way, he wouldn't have to be on the court at the exact same time as both Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. If he was open to that such idea, which I don't see why he wouldn't be. It's not like he's LeBron James, you know, But I understand if he wants to go somewhere and be that guy, then this wouldn't be the place. But I could see him fitting in with the Suns just fine.
Yeah, and I think you kind of put that perfectly. Him kind of fitting in that six-man role similar to Beal. I think it'd be maybe a little bit of more of a pack a punch than Beal would be off the bench for the Suns. But we got some reports kind of going into this more as obviously we want to look at these tweets from Sam Quinn as he gives a little bit of suggestions on this. And I got a question for you after this, Curtis, after we go over this. So the Bulls could obviously, if the Bulls could get the 2031 pick from the Bucks for Zach LaVine plus one of those new Suns picks from Phoenix for taking on Bradley Beal, he had to view that as a pretty successful overall deadline. Now, getting Beal to accept a trade to Chicago is another matter, but one issue at a time. And if we look at this, he thinks that this deal makes sense for both sides. If the Bucks are happy to trade a 2031 pick to get LaVine and give Giannis and Dame a real shot, why not go for it? And if I'm the Bulls, I would love to have an unprotected pick out of the rubble of a teardown that inevitably follows whatever this trio does. So I got two questions actually for you, Curtis. One, we'll look at this as a grand scheme of things. We're looking at this deal, right? We'll look back at it. Beal to the Bulls, obviously Middleton to the Heat. Bucks get Zach LaVine, Suns get Jimmy Butler. Outside of the Suns acquiring Jimmy Butler, what do you really think for the other teams involved in this trade? Do you think this is a win-win, similar to what Sam is suggesting? Because I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I agree with Sam. I think that this is a big move for all parties involved.
Yeah, I think everybody's getting a good slice of cake here. I mean, Bill would work over in Chicago. I think that he'd do a very good job, and they would need something to replace Zach Levine if they're going to go ahead and get that off. They're going to have the extra picks too, right? So they would be in a very win-win situation. Bucks also, um, and the Heat, the Heat getting off of Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think that everybody is going to be in a good spot if they let this happen. It's just one of those things that has to be seen. What are you thinking about it, Bruce?
I realistically like it. I think that it helps all the teams kind of getting off the contracts they don't want to. Bradley Beal, obviously, off the Suns. Zach LaVine off the Bulls. The Bulls still get some value off it as well. Even if it is Bradley Beal and even if he is on this roster for 2 years, you are getting so much future draft capital. Like we said, potentially a 2031 first from the Bucks. Who knows how many first from the Phoenix Suns? That is a pretty nice haul in my eyes if I am the Bulls. But as we all know, with the Bulls, and even for this trade to kind of go through, for it to even happen, Bradley Beal would have to accept that no trade clause. And you mentioned him in Chicago as a pretty nice fit. And I honestly think it wouldn't be that bad either. All depending on what they do. If they still had Vucevic, it could still be a pretty competitive team in the Eastern Conference. But if they traded Vucevic and if they just had Bradley Beal, he could be a nice little star by himself to kind of grow with some of these young guys, really teach them what to do, and kind of do that as well. Now, if you're not if you're Bradley Beal, but kind of, do you think Bradley Beal would even consider going to Chicago as an option, or do you think it's kind of one of his, I'm not really interested in one of those type of moves?
I'm gonna kind of answer that with a question because my mind is boggled by the whole idea. Let's do this. Bradley Beal, uh, any player, but obviously we're talking about Bradley Beal right now. I don't understand why if you're on the chopping block and you're being wheeled and dealed, and you know that a team is trying to get rid of you. I understand you have a no trade clause, but if you're going to a team where you get to go be the guy, I don't understand why you would veto any trade. I don't see why you wouldn't want to go anywhere that would take you and let you have that starting spot and let you get up in as many shots green light as you want. Yeah, I don't understand why you would force a team to keep you instead of just go where you're wanted. That's the way I want to put it. I just have to ask it with a question. Why wouldn't you take the trade? You
I,
know,
I I to give you an answer, I'm in a same agreement with you. I really don't know why you wouldn't take the trade. Like you said, you can go and obviously go to another team, kind of be that number one star, or even if you find yourself on a team that's still in the playoffs or possibly a play-in team, maybe not a top tier contender, could be that extra offensive push to put them into that category. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Bradley Beal still brings a lot offensively as a scorer, as a playmaker, and all depending on where he's really like paired up with. I think if he has some really solid defensive wings or a defensive point guard, playmaking point guard around him with a pretty solid center, he could be, a pretty decent fit around some of these other pieces. And that's why I think it was a little intriguing with him with the Bulls. Or with the Bucks, excuse me. I just think that the Bucks value Zach LaVine a little bit more, just because he's a little bit more athletic, can fit into that three position a little bit more easier to fill in for Chris Middleton, and is a
Hmm.
little bit cheaper. And I think the main thing as well with this Bradley Beal thing that I just want to say as well is it's very difficult, obviously, with the no trade clause, which you brought up, because I think that if I was Bradley Beal and I didn't have this no trade clause, I would be so much more open going to a team like Chicago, because I could go play there for this season, possibly play there for next half year as the star, and build up my trade value for other teams to be interested in wanting to trade for me. The only thing is he has that no trade clause. So once he builds up that trade value, then he's just going to be picking and choosing where he wants to go out of a handful of teams, and that becomes even another problem for Chicago if they even look to possibly deal him. You know what I mean?
That's very true. That's very true. It's who wrote the contract up. Let's go have a conversation with him because
Yeah, let's go meet with the
that's
old
where it all started.
Wizards front office and let's go have a nice chat with them. But Curtis, once again, this was an absolute fantastic breakdown, going over all the news, going over Bradley Beal possibly getting moved to Chicago, with looking at a possible mega trade and the Suns acquiring Jimmy Butler. But we want to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. So would you guys entertain a trade like this? Do you guys think this trade works? And ultimately, what do you want to see the Phoenix Suns do at the trade deadline? We'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Once again, you guys have been absolutely fantastic, showing your love and support on the channel over the last couple of weeks, and it's been really, really great. Curtis has been welcomed in with welcoming arms, and he's been super appreciative. And I'm just so glad we have such a great community to embrace us. So thank you guys so much once again for being so supportive. We really do appreciate all the love you guys give us, and we'll definitely be catching you guys sooner rather than later with a video coming out tonight, as the Suns obviously are on once again. But we'll be breaking down more Suns news for you all on Suns Digest. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on everything, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Phoenix Suns. Peace out, everyone.